Hi, everybody on YouTube. Welcome. We'll get started in just a moment. James, can you see my screen? Little thumbs up. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar, and we will go ahead and get started. All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. Hello, hello. If you can drop in the chat which city you are tuning in from this morning or this afternoon, that would be greatly appreciated. We can make sure our sound is working. I am in Oaxaca City, Mexico. Beautiful city. UK, Reading, Vancouver. Kansas, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Sunnyvale, New York, Memphis, great city. Amazing Las Vegas. Hi, everybody. Hi, Karen, good to see you. Shlomo, good to see you. Lori, Joanna. Amazing, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, it's 8:32. Hi, everybody. My name is Carly Letts. I'm our Director of Community here at Learnit, and it's a pleasure to be here with you with James Jeffley for our community event on presentation skills, Present Like a Pro. For those of you that are maybe new to Learnit and this is your first event with us, welcome. We are a learning and development organization based out of San Francisco, California, but really located nationwide, worldwide. And really our goal with these Friday events is to bring you a piece of our workshops or a guest speaker, some thought leadership every other Friday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we center our events around a quarterly theme. So our quarterly theme is rethinking company culture, specifically this month all around storytelling. So how do we tell our own personal stories at work to create more inclusive, more positive company culture? And also how do we, tell stories and become better storytellers ourselves, just in life, in our personal lives, in our relationships, so that we can have more trusting, collaborative friendships and relationships. These sessions and these events that we do are typically based on a full-length workshop. So our workshop today will be based on Learnit's full-length workshop on presentation skills, Present Like a Pro. And as always, they're led by subject matter experts and guest speakers like the amazing James Jeffley. So I'll go ahead and intro you to James. James is an award-winning international speaker and trainer. He's a professional coach, musician, and really a highly awarded speaker. He's a member of Toastmasters International and a two-time finalist in the World Championship of Public Speaking. He also has just 20 plus years experience of helping people really from around the world improve in human skills and life skills, and has really helped, I think, a lot of us throughout this pandemic. If you've been following along in our events, James has just been a huge asset and amazing person to collaborate with throughout the last 2 years. So thank you, James. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carly. And let me fire that up. Can everybody see my screen? We good?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, excellent. And let me turn that on. Super. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good wherever and whatever time it is for you. Welcome to Presentation Skills Present Like a Pro. As Carly said, I'm James Jeffley. So glad to be here with you all. Excuse me, in the next 60 minutes or so, we will explore a number of critical topics. As Carly mentioned, this is sort of an amuse-bouche for what we teach in a longer session, but you'll get great content today. I want to talk about how to plan presentations to improve audience retention, because here's what's true. Most people are not going to remember everything you say. There's a lot of folks that won't remember anything you say. So what's the point, right? How do we get the audience to remember? We'll talk about how to manage visual aids in PowerPoint and how to design your slides for maximum input. or impact. We'll talk about how do you feel and sound more confident and engage the audience like a professional. And I'll share with you some structures to keep your presentation succinct and impactful. And there'll be a few minutes at the end for Q&A. So let's dive in. Just drop a Y in the chat box if you've had this experience. You've walked around, if you wear glasses, or, and you're like, where did I put my glasses? But they were on your head the whole time. Or you're talking to your friend, you go, I can't find my cell phone. Wait a minute, you're on your phone now, right? Or it's in your hand, or it's right there, right? And so if you can't remember where you put your glasses and they're on your head, right? How much do you think you'll remember of someone's presentation? Not a lot. Here's what the statistics say. What do we actually remember? The National Highway Institute did some research on adult learning for their professional training staff. And the research found that only 50%, half of your audience, remembers what you said in the first 10 minutes of your presentation. Half of your audience remembers what you said in the first 10 minutes of your presentation. What happens after that? Well, in the next 24 hours, where do you think that number goes? Is it still 50% of your audience remembers what you said in the first 10 minutes, or does it go down? It goes way down. 25% of your audience still remembers what you said in the first 10 minutes. 5 days later, at the end of the week, about 10%. Right? So if you talk to 10 people, right, by the end of the week, maybe one of them has remembered what you said in the first 10 minutes. But let's say you spoke for an hour or half an hour. They have missed most of what you have shared. Is this shocking for anyone? Surprising, right? So number one, don't think everybody listens. And number two, don't think everybody remembers, because they don't. Here are three reasons why your presentations succeed less often than you'd like. Did you like that? Thank you. Number one, the audience attention span. According to most studies done on this subject, the average adult has a maximum attention span of about 20 minutes. That's it. There's another study that says the average adult attention span is less than that of a goldfish. Right? So if you don't grab people's attention at the beginning and keep them engaged, they're more likely, squirrel, to just start looking at something else, pull up another monitor, they're on their phone checking, Amazon or Netflix or whatever, right? So we do have the ability to refocus our attention and get back on track, regardless of age, right? But people will check out. In fact, 4 out of 5 business professionals, regardless of age, shift their focus away from the speaker in the most recent presentation they've watched. Is this true for you all? How many of you started watching somebody's presentation and then within a few minutes, boom, you went someplace else, right? Some of you might be in someplace else right now. I hope not. So number one, you're dealing with your audience's attention span. They're very short, and so you have to constantly keep them engaged. Number two, sameness. You are fighting against sameness. One of the reasons your presentations do not succeed as often as you'd like is because they look and sound the same as all the other presentations that everyone sees. 35 million. That's the number of PowerPoint presentations given each day around the world to over 500 million audiences. 35 million PowerPoint presentations a day, over 500 million audiences. How many do you see per day or per week? Just drop it in the chat box. How many presentations do you see per day or per week? For some of you, it may not be that many. You might see 1 or 2 per week. Others, you might see, 2 a day. It depends. 5 for Sheila, 2 for Georgina, 1 to 2 a week, 3. Yeah. So, if you're seeing, 3 presentations a week or so, how many of them look different from each other? How many of them look the same? Same template, same format, same type of data, same style, more of the same. So how do you engage the audience? How do you increase retention? You got to do something different. You've got to mix it up, not have your presentation look like everybody else's presentation. Otherwise, people get bored quicker and they check out faster. Most people are multitasking during the mini meetings. Yeah, I ask people to be present. During my presentations, if it's a training class, I ask people to turn on their cameras and I ask people to be present. Put away your email. Give me your undivided attention for the hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long I'm spending with you. Because here's why. If you want to get the most out of this experience, then I need to have the most of you in it. And that means to manage your distractions. So you're battling audience attention span, you're battling sameness. Here's the third reasons your presentations succeed less often than you'd like. You. Right? You're managing your anxiety, managing your organization, managing not getting lost, managing figuring out how to say it the right way. I'm going to give you some tips later on for how to manage you, but I'd like you to think about this right now. Jot this down somewhere. Scale is 0 to 10, 0 meaning bleh, and 10 meaning woohoo, couldn't be better. How happy are you with your presentation skills? Just jot it down. How happy are you with your presentation skills? Susan says a 4. Okay. Jose, 5. Sheila B, 0. Oh, Sheila B, I bet it's better than that. Schwandra, 6. We got 3s, 1s, 7s, 3s. They're all over the board. Okay. Super. Now, think about one thing you do well. What's one thing you do well in presenting? Maybe you're very organized. Maybe you build nice slide decks. Maybe you have a good grasp of the material. What's one thing you do well in presenting? Jot that down because I want you to give yourselves credit for that. Even if you wrote down a 1, there's something you do well. Even if you wrote down a 0, you're not giving yourself enough credit. There's something you do well. Good visuals, you check for understanding, you interact with the audience. Yeah, that kind of thing. You engage people before the presentation. Taha, that's one of the things that I miss about in-person is because I was, you always get to the event early. And as people would come in, I would greet them and have a conversation. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? What's your name? What do you want to learn today? Right? And so often that doesn't happen in the virtual world. People just kind of skate in, 30 seconds or right on the time. You don't always get that opportunity to engage before the presentation. So that's one thing I miss about it, right? So there's where you are, and that's what you do well. Now, what's the level of satisfaction you'd like to get to with your presentation skills? You're at a 4 now. Where would you like to be by the end of the year? You're at a 2 now. Where would you like to be by the end of the year? Look at all the overachievers going for 10, 9s and 10s, 7 to 8, 9.5. Thank you, Sonny. Every time I've asked this, somebody's always given me a decimal point. So 9.5. Thank you. Yeah. So wherever you are, you want to be better, right? Wherever that number is for you. Now, write down the one thing. What's the one thing that you need to work on to close that gap between where you are and where you want to be? What's the one thing you need to work on? Is it your slide construction, use of visuals and PowerPoint? Is it managing the technology while doing virtual presentations? Is it your energy and enthusiasm? Is it command of your subject matter? Is it your voice, your body language and gesture, your posture, how you interact with the camera? Improve content presentation and visuals, voice and confidence, managing technology. Kelly says everything. Love that, Kelly. Structure. Okay, great. Super. Interacting with the audience. Excellent. Excellent. So wherever you are, you do have the opportunity to get better. And I believe that all of you can, and you all know what you need to work on. So work on that. because the sooner you start working on that aspect of your presentations, the sooner you get better. And the sooner you start to close that gap from where you are to where you want to be. And when you close that gap, you won't be the only beneficiary of that, will you? Who else will benefit from you being at that higher level of presentation capability? Who else will benefit? Everyone, right, Gary? Right, Jose? The audience, your audience will, the listeners, right? So here's what I'd like you to do. Think about a presentation that you have to give soon. It may not be a business presentation, right? It may not be a formal presentation. Maybe it's an informal one. Your boss, calls on you in the Zoom meeting and says, hey, Sonny, could you give us an update on your project? You weren't prepared. So pro tip number 1, always be prepared. Always be prepared to say something, because you never know when you're going to get asked in a meeting. How many of you have gotten surprised in a meeting where your manager or somebody just said, hey, tell us about blah, 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 and you had to come up with a presentation on the spot? Maybe not PowerPoint, but you had to give them a recap, a status report, right? Happens all the time. If it hasn't happened to you, it's only because it hasn't happened to you yet. It's just a matter of time. So I want you to think about a presentation that you might have to give, a basic status report, an update on a project. It could be a formal presentation. Maybe it's not even something at work. Maybe it's something you're doing in your community. There are a lot of people who are involved in social work and community activism. Maybe there's a presentation at your church or your neighborhood group. Think about someplace where you will have to give a presentation. Maybe you're giving a toast at your friend's wedding, right? So think about that presentation, because all the other things I'm going to share with you are related to making that presentation better. All right. We talked about attention span and retention. So let me share some tips with you on how to improve audience retention. And this is also a tip for how to structure your presentation. One of the ways to increase engagement, one of the ways to increase retention level for your audience, and one of the ways to make writing your presentation easier and being able to give a presentation right on the spot is in structure. And so here's one structure I want to share with you that gives you multiple benefits. And they're what I call the TAs. What are the TAs? These are the TAs. I feel like I have to keep my pinky out when I say that. TA number 1, the TAM, the takeaway message. Some people, when they write presentations, most people, and I've coached a lot of people around the world on this, when they write a presentation, they start with all the data that they want to share. Learnit offers a class called Storytelling with Data. And in that class, I often talk about how, we start with everything and the kitchen sink, all the data that we want to share, data. And then somewhere at the bottom of that, we eventually get to the point. Your audience is not going to stay engaged with you if you go through 11 million data points just to finally get to the point. How many of you have seen a presentation like that? Data, and then like half an hour later, there was a point, right? Stop that. Right. How did you feel watching that kind of presentation? Were you engaged? Were you excited? Were you like, ooh, share more data? Yeah, horrified. Thank you, Marcia. It's like, right? So here's how you start this. Your presentation that you need to give soon, what's the most important thing you want them to know? That's your takeaway message. What is the most important thing you want them to remember? Start with that. But the data, forget the data. What's the message? Start with the point. What's the most important point you want your audience to remember? 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, if people are talking, oh my gosh, that Sheila B, her presentation was amazing. I loved her point about X. Whatever X is should be your takeaway message. So take a moment, jot down what's the most important message you want your audience to remember for your next presentation. Jot it down. You don't have to put it in the chat box, but just for yourself, right? takeaway message, start with that. And then add one data point, the most important piece of data that supports that message. 2, takeaway action. Most of the time, we want our audience to do something at the end of our presentation. Yes? We want them to start something, stop something, approve something, take action on something, read something, fill something out. We want them to do something, right? So what is that? What is the action, the specific measurable action you want your audience to take at the end of your presentation? Think about an upcoming presentation. What do you want your audience to do at the end of it? Write that down. Now you've come up with the message, the thing that you want them to remember. You've come up with the action, the thing you want them to do. Here's the third thing that you write down in your structure for your presentation. It's the tab, the takeaway benefit. What is the benefit of your presentation, of your message and your action to the audience? Most everybody in your audience is dialed into the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? WIIFM. So they're sitting there going, okay, when are you going to say something relevant? When are you going to say something useful, something that makes a difference in my life? So think about that when you're writing your presentation. What is the benefit in my message and my action to my audience? How do they improve? If you can focus on your audience, if you can focus on the benefit to them, then chances are you're going to be much more concise and impactful. Am I making sense, folks? So if you look at what you just wrote down, the main message, the main action, and the benefit to the audience, you've got the outline for, you've got the foundation for a really impactful presentation. Now you just have to add 1 or 2 key data points, maybe throw in a compelling picture, a chart or a graph, or a story to tie all of that together. When we're talking about designs of PowerPoint slides, how many of you have seen presentations where it's just text slide after text slide after text slide after text slide? You seen that? With bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. What's the impact on you when you just see a tsunami of text? Right, Kelly? What's the impact on you all when you see all of it? Sleep. Jose wants to go to sleep because again, it's sameness. Text after text after text. Kim is already out. Right? So boring. Yeah, so don't do that. Here's why. If you only show text on your slide, your audience will remember about 10% of what you said. You slide under your seat. Love that, Kelly. You're not going to read it, right? If not covered by the great talk of, what is the effect of telling a known story metaphor similar compared to tell a totally new story nobody has heard? What is the effect of telling a known story? Well, one of the benefits of telling a known story, Lars, is that it's something that most people can relate to. If you're using that story as a metaphor for your business point. I've used a number of metaphors, a number of stories in business presentations before, but I've tried to pick something that most people would know. And you have to be very careful about this, especially if you're speaking to an international audience. I often speak with companies that have employees all around the world. So if I use a US-centric example, that might land flat with people from, APAC or Europe or wherever, right? So I have to think about my audience and what story might be universal. And if that is a good fit for the message that I'm trying to get across. But if you're only showing text, 10%, that's how much your audiences might remember. If you show a visual, 30% retention. Because pictures go straight to the mind and the heart, right? A picture's worth how many words? So they say, at least 1,000. If you combine a text, simple text and visual, 65% increased retention rates. So if you want your audience to remember more of what you say, don't just show them text. Don't just show them visuals, show them text and visuals, or show them a visual with a story. Thank you, Lars. I appreciate that. Here's something else to consider in terms of connecting with your audience. This is from Harvard Business Publishing. 40% of the people in your audience are primarily visual learners. That means for them to connect with your message, they need to see something visual, not just text. They need to see videos, diagrams, illustrations, infographics, charts. They need to see some graphical representation of your data. If you're writing presentations, you're only thinking in words, you're missing out on 40% of your audience, because chances are you'll just throw words on a slide. Stop that. You've got to have some sort of graphic there. I could have just put this up as a bullet point with text only, but I'm using icons here because I practice what I preach most of the time. 40% of your audience is auditory. That's their primary way of processing information. And so what that means is they learn best through lectures and discussions. This is why you got to engage with your audience and ask questions. And even though none of you are on camera right now and you don't have your microphones unmuted, I'm still engaging with you through the chat box. I'm asking you to think about things, write things down, and I'm asking you to jot things in the chat box. No worry. Take care of that, Susan. Hope everything goes well. 40% or 20% of your audience, does it make a difference if a manager, CEO, or coworker? No. Doesn't matter your age, your title, your seniority in the organization. This is a human being thing, Gary. This is a human being thing. 40% of your audience needs to see something. 40% needs to hear something and be engaged. 20%, they're the kinesthetic people. If I was doing training in person, then we would be doing exercises with each other, right? I'd have you working on things in groups. This is why in the virtual world, breakouts are so important, right? You got to make sure you have breakouts. So people need to do something, even if it's a conversation with someone else, or writing down an outline, takeaway, message, action, benefit, right? They need to have some sort of activity. One of the other things that kinesthetic learners learn through is through experience or feeling. And this is why storytelling is so important. If you can tell a story, that allows the kinesthetic learner to connect to your story through the emotion of it. And through that emotional connection, they tend to retain more and pay attention longer. Think about your presentations. Which of these do you need to work on? Do you need to add more visuals? Do you need to pay more attention to the speaking and the discussion and the interaction, or the kinesthetic activities and storytelling? Which of those do you think needs a little bit of work? Kinesthetic, all of them. Wendy, thank you. Kanu says kinesthetic. I hope I said your name correctly. Nathan says visuals. Okay, if I said kinesthetic. Okay, great. So now here's another thing for you to work on. Who remembers story time? Anybody ever have story time, either in school or at home with parents or guardians or love anybody? Right? Wasn't story time great? Still love story time. Yeah, it was so great. Somebody would tell a story and maybe there would be, pictures or something. And it's like, oh, it was so much fun. It wasn't a lecture. You suspended reality and you went into a place and there were characters and it was vibrant and vivid, and it transported you into a different place. I have a feeling interaction is the hardest part to master. Yeah, Lars, it can be. It can be. But here's one of the cool things about stories. I don't care where you are in the world right now, where you were born or where you grew up. You know what we all grew up with? Stories. Everybody in here, regardless of your native language, regardless of anything, you grew up with stories. Yes? We got people from all over the world in here today. You got stories growing up, didn't you? Right? Doesn't matter what language or any of that. We got stories. Stories are universal, and there is a format to stories that when you tell them, if you follow that format of stories, most people on the planet can actually relate to them. They can relate to your story. If you're just throwing data out there, you're going to lose most of the audience. But if you throw data out there with a story, people are more likely to engage, pay attention, and remember. Yes, Taha, storytelling is an art. Let me tell you a little story. Tell you a story about a time that I fell off the toilet bowl. Now pause. Just the way I started that story probably hooked most of you. Wait, he fell off the toilet bowl? Oh my gosh. How many of you want to lean in and listen to that story? Right? Captivated already. It's like, who tells a story about this? I do. I was about 4 years old or so at the time, and I used to like to watch my father shave. I thought it was fascinating. I didn't know what it was. He had furry stuff on his face, and he would go into the bathroom and he would put this cream on his face that looked like whipped cream or frosting. And then he would get this little stick out and he would pull the stick across his face. And then, as if by magic, the fur on his face went away. My 4-year-old mind blown. So I would stand on the stool, lean over, and watch my dad make the hair go away. Amazing. Until I slipped and fell, hit my chin. You can't see it because there's hair there, but there's a little scar there. Hit my chin on the sink and split that open, and I will spare you the details, but it was not fun. And that was my first experience with stitches. Right, Jose? So just by telling that story, I connected in a deeper way with Jose, because Jose remembered watching their dad shave, right? So that's the power of the story. And if you don't remember anything else about me for the rest of your lives, you might remember, oh, there was a guy who told a story about falling off a toilet stool, right? There's something about stories that not only helps people engage and it is interesting and creates variation in your presentations, it helps them remember. In fact, there's research that shows that stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts or figures alone. You too with your dad, Wendy? Aw. 22 times, up to 22 times more memorable than facts or figures alone. And people are twice as likely to be persuaded into action when a story is included. Not only are they more likely to remember what you say, they're actually more likely to take action. And if the point of your story is to persuade, if the point of your presentation is to move people to action, the shortcut to that is tell a powerful, compelling story. Let's talk about how to begin a presentation. How many ways do you normally see people present? Let me spare you. Probably not a lot. The title slide of the presentation, the name of it, who the person is, company information, date. Is that usually what you see? And if it's the same template, by that point, you're like, what is the new episode of This Is Us coming out? Which is a tearjerker. Don't watch that show without Kleenex. What are some other creative, engaging, captivating ways of starting a presentation? How else could we start a presentation besides the title slide and the agenda? What else could we start with? Drop it in the chat box. You start with a picture, right? Here's one. Hand out caffeine. A short video. That would be great. A joke. Be careful about the jokes and the humor, Sonny. Not everything is funny, right? Check it with, a bunch of people before you tell that joke. And don't tell a joke at the expense of your audience. Self-deprecating humor is usually more effective than pulling somebody out. Motivational quotes and pictures. You got to start with a question. You see that picture? Look at that. Does that make you pause for a moment? Wait a minute. Hold on. Here's a person swimming in concrete. In asphalt. How does this, what? Right. So a compelling picture, not just any picture, but a picture that is thought-provoking, right? Illusion wallpapers, right? An MC Escher drawing, right? So you start with a surprise, something that they're not expecting, because you're competing against sameness. Here's some other ways, and many of you have already said these. You can start with a statistic. 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed who chew gum recommend, right? 9 out of 10, whatever. Yes, it absolutely needs to be relatable, Taha. If I'm showing this picture, I need to be able to relate that to whatever my topic is. Somebody give me a topic. Just drop a topic in the chat box. Any topic. Flies. Okay, that was the first one. Flies. Okay. So if I'm using this and my presentation is about flies, that's a little odd. I'm gonna go with the DE&I from Sunny. That's more of a business focused one. I may still try and do the flies. So what does this have to do with diversity, equity, inclusion? Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, is a present one. It is an important one, and it's one that's showing up and having greater impact on our lives. And it's not always the easiest thing to talk about. It's actually very challenging. It's almost like trying to swim in the middle of the highway. We don't even know how we're going to have this conversation. And yet it's an important conversation to have. Thank you, Sheila. Ta-da, ta-da. Now, let me, flies. Are you talking about the actual insects, the flies? How would I relate that to flies? I don't know. I'm not even going to mess with that. So you have an opportunity. I'm going to go out on the high note there. How else can you start this? You could start with a quote. Somebody mentioned that in the chat box. You could start with a story and then go into your presentation. You could start with a shocking statement. And if it's true and you've got verifiable data to support it, yeah, that'll get people's attention and make them lean in because you've shocked them out of sameness. A compelling visual, right? Or video. There are lots of different ways to start. So take a moment, think about how you could start your next presentation differently. Which one of these ideas appeals to you? Either what I've showed you here or what's been mentioned by others in the chat box. How could you start your next presentation a little differently to grab your audience's attention and keep them engaged? What could you start with? And I would invite you to start with something that you don't usually start with. You can still do the title slide and the agenda after that. Just make your first thing something different. Shocking statement, Faiza says. Great. Compelling visual for Kim. Jose, compelling visual, shocking statement. Thank you, Marcy. Glad you like this. For example, even before I say a word, pause. Even before I say a word, what are you thinking about that number? It's too high. What if that's your bonus this year, Marcia? A lot of people are saying money, debt, big. What does it relate to? It's big, right? It's not currency because there's no currency symbol there, right? Many of you are saying money, 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 but there's no currency symbol there. So you don't know if that's dollars or pesos or yen or won or what have you. It's a statistic. But what I've done is I've hooked your attention. Yes, it makes you wonder because I haven't given you enough information to provide context. You don't know if it's people, if it's money, if it's widgets. You have no idea what it is. I've given you a problem without an answer. And now you're hooked because the brain doesn't like unsolved problems. So you want to know 550 million what? Unpause. 550 million. 550 million. Every year in the United States, 550 million work days are lost. Every year in the United States, 550 million work days are lost, and over half of those work days are lost because of one thing: stress. Hi, my name is James Jeffley, and I'd like to tell you about a series of new wellness programs offered here at Learnit. If you take those classes, maybe you won't be one of the 550 million workdays. You with me? The other day, I was told this story is most effective when talking to emotional rather than the logic part of the brain. Can that be right? Couldn't even the rational part of the brain be affected by an emotional story? Yeah, it can be, Lars. Any of you Star Trek fans? The original series, Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, Lieutenant Uhura, Scotty, beam me up, Scotty. Okay. Most of us, especially in business, like to think we're Spock, logical and rational, but when we make decisions, we're really Kirk. Right? We're really emotional. This is just how human beings work, right? This is how human beings work. Most of us make decisions based on emotion, and then we try to rationalize it with logic later. Well, I bought the Porsche because I thought it was, got good gas mileage. It's a good investment. Stop. There's no good gas mileage or a good investment in a Porsche. You bought it because you thought you'd look good in it. Right? The Porsche was on sale. I couldn't pass it up, honey. It was on sale. I had to. Good luck selling that idea at home. Right? It goes fast. That's why I bought it. It goes fast. Most of us make decisions emotionally with the heart, and then we try to justify them rationally with the brain. So to only focus on the brain portion of persuasion, to only focus on logic, means you're probably missing out on at least half of your audience. I would say the number's bigger than that. So what I attempt to do is connect head and heart. I want to tell stories that appeal to the emotions, but I also want to put solid data in the presentation to appeal to the rational mind. And so if you get both of those talking and agreeing with each other, boom, now you've got influence. Implicit association test shows this. Absolutely, Mark, right? So it's 550 million what? What does that number represent? Workdays lost. Yes. Where? In the US due to stress. How often? Yearly. Look at how much you are remembering. And the only thing I showed you is one number. Hold on to something. This might be shocking. That's actually true. That's actually true. Folks, we've been through a lot of stuff in these last couple of years or so. Yes. Please prioritize self-care. Make time for yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Eat right, exercise, meditate, yoga, whatever, right? Seek professional help. Talk to counselors, therapists, whatever you need. Take care of your families. There's a lot going on in the world right now, right? Please prioritize self-care. What have you noticed about my PowerPoint slides so far? Like crammed full of text and data, or something different? What have you noticed? Visuals, not jumbled. Not much text, but still a lot of content. Simple, easy to absorb. That's the goal. That was my entire master plan, Wendy. Simple and easy to absorb. Yes, Mark, thank you. What? Everybody stop what you're doing. Look at what Mark said in the chat box. You are the presentation. That's it. Mark, if you have a mic, just go ahead and drop that right now. Mark gets a mic drop. You are the presentation. They don't come to see your PowerPoint. They don't come to see your Excel. They don't come to see whatever other data source you're going to pull up. They come to see you as the subject matter expert on that, thank you, you are the presentation. It is all about you. I'm going to share more on that in just a minute, and we'll take some questions. Let me give you some rules to follow. Now, these are guidelines, but if you follow them, chances are you will have slides that are not jumbled, hot messes of extraneous data. One of the rules, many of you probably heard of this, is the 6x6 rule. What that means is when you're designing your slides, no more than 6 bullets per slide, no more than 6 words per bullet. And there's some people that do the 4x6 rule, no more than 4 bullets per slide, no more than 6 words per bullet. You're not writing a thesis. You're not putting a dissertation on a slide. If I see a wall of text, I'm like, check, next. 6x6 or 4x6 rule. The 10-20-30 rule. This is no more than 10 slides total, no longer than 20 minutes total for your presentation, and no fonts less than 30 points in size. No more than 10 slides total, no longer than 20 minutes, and no fonts less than 30 points. There's another thing. If you haven't heard of this, Google this, not right now, but Google this later and watch some of these, because some of these are fascinating. It's called pachakacha. I believe it's a Japanese expression which translates to chit chat. It's a presentation format that has been used all over the world. They actually have pachakacha nights in places. And this is where you get 20 slides max, no more than 20 seconds per slide, and a total time of, get this, 6 minutes and 40 seconds. That's it. You got 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, and they time you 6 minutes, 40 seconds total. And the last rule I would invite you to follow is vary the slide formats. Don't have text slide, text slide, text slide, text slide, text slide. Mix it up. Text slide, text and picture, chart, text and picture, picture only, blank slide, or get off the screen so they just listen to you. But mix it up. Vary the formats, because if you think about it, when you watch television, you don't see the same image for minutes at a time. They're always changing the beats every few seconds, right? Less than 10 seconds. You're switching to a different scene, a different camera angle. Something's always happening. Plus a commercial break, right? All right. You probably heard this. The number one fear of human beings worldwide is public speaking. We hear this all the time. You've heard this statistic, right? Number one fear. It's not death. You'd think it would be death, but no. Jerry Seinfeld had a great line about this. He said, if public speaking is the number one fear and not death, then the person giving the eulogy is actually more afraid than the person lying in the casket. Something like that. Here's a stat about the fear of public speaking. 75% of adults are estimated to be affected by a fear of public speaking. 75% of adults who have to give presentations are affected by anxiety, by fear of public speaking. Here's the other shocking corollary to that. 90% of anxiety we feel before giving a presentation comes from lack of preparation. You all see that? Lack of preparation. You know who is best to help you get over your anxiety? You. You know how? Practice. 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 And I say it's not the fear of public speaking. That's not what gets you scared. That's not what makes you anxious. It's the fear of looking stupid or incompetent while you're presenting. That's what it really is about. It's like you don't want to look like a complete idiot when you're presenting, because now that's going to jeopardize your career plans. You may not be able to eat. All right, let me share a couple of other things, and I'll take some questions from you. Here's 7 things you can work on. 7 things you can work on. You can overcome to be a better presenter. Number 1, anxiety. And I just talked about that. How do we get over anxiety? Practice, practice, practice. Here's one more tip for getting over anxiety. Shift your focus. If my focus is on me, how good I look, how good I sound, do people like me? My focus is in the wrong place. All of those things are ego-based, and all of those are potential traps that I can fall into a state of anxiety in. Shift my focus, shift your focus to the audience. You're not there as a speaker. You're there as a servant. You are there to serve the best interests of the audience. You are there to provide information, ideas that can help benefit them. I am in service to you. If my focus is on you, I don't have any room in here to worry about myself, because it's not about me. It's about you. The moment I had that realization, everything changed for me as a presenter. Everything changed. 2 ways to get over anxiety. Prepare. Don't wait till the last minute, and make your audience the focus, not yourself. Number 2, content confusion. That's why I gave you those takeaway message, takeaway action, takeaway benefit. Start with a simple outline first. Don't try to throw a bunch of data points in there. If you know what you want to say and what you want them to do and why that's good for them, boom, that's enough. Maybe throw in one relevant piece of compelling data. That's your presentation. You can do that on the fly, right? And that can help you avoid confusion about what content to include. If it doesn't support the message, action, or benefit, why would you put it in there? It's not relevant. Third thing, no engagement. Try to get to the meeting early. Talk to people before you start. Hey, welcome. How you doing? What do you want to learn today? What do you want to get from my presentation? That sort of thing. Poor body language. A lot of people are presenting virtually these days, and so make sure you've got a comfortable chair. Make sure you're sitting up when you're presenting. Try to have your camera positioned so that it looks like you're actually making eye contact with people versus looking over here or looking over there. Get 2 monitors. If you're doing a lot of virtual presenting, have your slideshow. Mine is over there on that monitor, and my camera is here in the middle, and so that can help you. But make sure you have an upright body posture and also a bit relaxed. Lack of energy. Get sleep before your presentation, right? Be excited about the information that you're going to show, and vary your voice inflection as you go along. Losing your place. If I only have 3 things to cover, it's very unlikely I'm going to lose my place. Message, action, benefit. And I don't even have to go in that order. I can start with the benefit and then go to the message and then the action. Or start with the action and the benefit and then the message. They're interchangeable. And no audience interaction. Ask your audience questions. Engage with them. Chat box if you're doing virtual. If you're in person, you walk around and talk to people, right? So that's what I have for you today for how to speak like a pro. We've got a few minutes left. I'll take some questions at this time. Who's got a question?
Thank you, James. There was a good question.
Don't be shy.
Just while people
Would
just
you
while
repeat
people
the 30? Oh, the 30 in the 10, 20, 30 is font size, no less than 30 points.
James, can you hear me?
Gary, less talking or more talking? It depends. If you're giving a keynote presentation, well, you're the only one talking. But if you're doing training or an interactive, business presentation, I would say try to make it, 60-40, 60 you, 40 the audience, and engage with questions. My mind will go completely blank after talking a while. Yeah, I hear that. So Kelly, then in that moment, stop talking. Ask the audience a question. And that will allow you a chance to recompose. And then based on what they ask you, you can pick up your train of thought. Anything else? We got a few minutes left. Any other questions?
Yeah, James, we had a question from Faiza that I think was a good one to highlight. It was, is there an element of...
Charlie can't hear you.
It's interesting. I think everyone else can hear me, but James, you can't hear me. Can everyone else hear me? Huh, that's interesting. All right, James can't hear me, but everyone else can.
Still not hearing you, Carly. Do you have an extra mute button there somewhere? Oh, maybe that's just me.
James,
Hold
you
on,
don't
my
want to hear
speakers
me.
went off.
Can you hear me now?
How long should the presentation be? Gary asks. Ask the person who asked you to present how much time you have, and then you have to make it fit within that. Gary, you have 5 minutes. Okay, be succinct. Gary, you have 50 minutes. Still be succinct and leave time for questions at the end. I got it now. Anybody else? Other questions? We got a Q&A box. We got the chat box there. Is there the element of TAB necessary to keep in mind? Because when you're presenting on the same topic in class, folks don't focus on the point of takeaway benefit because all folks present on the same thing. If I mention the benefit to the audience and nobody else does, it may make it seem like I'm actually a little more concerned about the audience's well-being, or at least considering the audience's well-being. So whether I say it or not, I think it's important for me to still consider what's the benefit to the audience. And if I make it a point to mention the benefit, that may be an additional incentive for the audience to take action on what I'm sharing. What makes a good story to connect with the message? It depends, Star. One of the things I would look at is something from your own experience, because number one, you know that story. You don't have to remember somebody else's story because you've lived it. The second thing is you'll need to consider how vulnerable you want to be and how much of your personal life you want to share with that particular audience. I don't mind sharing the story about me falling off the toilet when I was 4, watching my dad shave. That's a story that I think doesn't offend audiences. I've never gotten negative feedback about, and I don't mind people knowing that about me. Other things may be good, but no, I'm not going to share that. Thank you, Pamela. Glad you enjoyed it.
Let's see. James, I'm going to pause this right there just so we have some time just to share with people how to access the recording and everything. So everyone, if you enjoyed today, I see we've already got some positive feedback coming in through the chat. So thank you so much, James, for an incredible presentation. And everyone, if you want to access the recording, you can access it in our community called Offsite. I put the link to the event in there. It's completely free. And we have past recordings in there. We have free resources. And if you ask a question in Offsite, we will get back to you within 1 business day with an answer from one of our amazing instructors like James. So we encourage you to join. I'll also pull up the QR code for that as well and share with you a couple of the 2-hour workshops that we also have coming up on this. So if you liked today, you can take the full-length workshop as well, which is 2 2-hour workshops. We have that coming up on May 9th and 10th, so next week, and then July 15th and 16th. So just a little nudge there. If you are interested in diving deeper, just reach out to myself and we can, a little slide on Brian, a little surprise. But you can reach out to myself in Offsite or email us at community@learnit.com, and we're happy to share more. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, James. It's always a pleasure having you, truly. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
Have a great weekend. Woohoo! Well, are we still live on YouTube?
We're still live. I'll go ahead and